Hi, welcome back to this podcast from the Green EFA Group in the European Parliament. I'm Simon McKegney, and today we're going to talk about Ukraine. I'm joined today with two very esteemed members of our group. We have Markéta Gregorová from the Czech Republic and Staķis from Latvia. You're both very, very welcome.
Thank you.
Our topic today, as I said, is Ukraine. You're both experts in the field. You both had personal and political experience with Putin's war in Ukraine. We want to get into detail on that and see why Ukraine is so important to our group and what the ongoing war means for everyone in Europe. First, though, we want to get to know you both a little bit. So maybe we go to Markéta first. Why did you get into politics? For what reasons did you get into politics?
Thank you for the question and the nice interaction. I actually was always interested in politics. I remember that when I was 10 years old, I wanted to become the president because I hated the huge billboards, the advertisement signs that were next to my path to my elementary school. Of course, I did not become president just yet to deal with this issue.
There's still time.
But I was always very, activistic. And when I joined my party, when I was 18 and got to university in Brno, which is the second largest and the best city in Czechia, I sort of started to hang out with this group of IT nerds. And it so happened that later on they became a proper political party. So I ran for them. Those are my people, but not only, IT nerds, but everybody who really wants freedom and is not limited by, its narrow definitions of today's offline world.
And I'm sure we'll get into everything around disinformation happening in Ukraine and the Russian war as well.
Yes.
Martins, how did you get into politics?
Well, my story is not as interesting as Markéta's story, I have to warn you, but I think I reached a point when just criticizing politics became too seamless and hopeless. So if you think you can do it better, just go and do it. But my family is a politician family, so politics was always on our, Sunday's dinner table for a long time. And third, I think we can see that many countries in the European Union now actually are moving away from the European values, and this is something that really concerns me. So I think those who really believe in European values should go to the politics. It's the best time for that.
If we move to Ukraine now, what is your relationship with Ukraine over the last few years, or maybe even before everything happened at the start of the war? Maybe we go to Markéta first, whoever wants to answer.
But we can also switch later. Relationship, it of course grew over time. I already in my studies focus on what we call Eastern Partnership, and I felt and seen so many similarities. I slightly always more focus on Georgia because I felt like everybody else gets enough attention, and Georgia is screwed geographically, too far away, but so similar to us. But it also, of course, gave me access to many other politicians from that region. And of course, I was always focused on security and disinformation. So Ukraine was a great asset, and we gained so much know-how in terms of fighting disinformation because they were really the first target of Russia. And then after 2022, I started traveling there quite often with, people who have been there for a very long time. And since 2022, they started to gather evidence of war crimes. I even had an event here showcasing what they already found. And it sort of became this very, special friendship even. So for me, Ukraine is really not just, work related. It's now also friendship. And every day I am on Signal, I am on, other apps checking whether my friends are still alive. So it became very personal.
And Martin,
we share the same experience and same history, with Ukraine, with the same neighbor who always tries to somehow oppress us. Of course, we understood that Ukraine is in troubles already in 2014. Mm-hmm. And so now we can see when the war started, many put the Ukrainian flags on the buildings. In Riga, when I was the mayor of Riga, we did it week before the war because we knew this was going to happen. And when I was working in the Ministry of Defense, one of my tasks was, go around to conferences and talk about security and defense issues. We warned our colleagues here in Europe that this might happen, and this will happen. And I remember that many of them said, well, you are just a Russophobe and you need to find, diplomatic way how to deal with them. And then it just happened. And we said, well, we warned you and you didn't listen. And this is one of the reasons that this really happened. So, yes, of course, my closest relations with Ukraine was then when the war started. I was the mayor of the city, and there was thousands of Ukrainians coming to our city because Ukrainians has their diaspora in Riga. And I see that actually government is not dealing with the situation. So we opened the first Ukrainian refugee center, then the second and the third. So I met them, thousands of them, and one of the centers was like 50 meters from the Rathaus, from the mayor's office. So I can see them by my window and visit the center every single day. And of course, when you hear the stories of the people and how much they suffer and what they have going through, of course, it opens the hearts and minds and to do something.
And Markéta, if you think back to the February 2022, when that, well, let's say second phase, we have Crimea, of course, before that. But how big of a shock was it for you when that happened?
Well, it wasn't entirely a shock. I always say that if I leave politics, I could become a forecaster. I'm quite good in my forecasting.
All right.
Of course, I also make mistakes in assumptions, especially Trump is not well readable for me, but Putin was very, very well readable for me. Maybe it is because, we are Eastern Europeans. I know that my fellow Czechs are now like, no, we are Central Europeans, but, I think that's a little bit of a scam. We are Eastern and proud. And we share the same history, and we know about Russia and Soviet Union and Putin and where he came from, what's his background. So I expected it to some extent. I was already in the security community, so there was the talk when it will happen. Strangely enough for me, it happened when I was in Euronest delegation in Armenia. So our flights got cancelled, we couldn't travel around there. I had many friends sort of locked in Ukraine itself. I was locked in Armenia. It felt really surreal, just on a personal level. We really didn't know what next will happen, because you can prepare mentally for escalation, as we say, or Putin doing something, but the real consequences of war are always, they hit different when you experience them.
But the third thing is that, as I said, we warn everyone, but I didn't believe this was going to happen. Because from the military point of view, it doesn't make any sense. When you plan the attack, you always calculate the ratio. You have triple time more soldiers, the weapons, the military vehicle to attack someone. Only then the attack might be successful. And if you look how many the troops were on the Ukrainian border, it's a clear sign that they are not serious, because they overestimated the Ukrainian army, or the military planning was so weak. And we of course see that that the first attack failed quite dramatically. So from military point of view, this was a very strange thing to do without any success.
We should explain to our listeners that you do have a military background as well, so you're well versed in military strategy as well.
Well, I'm from private first class. I'm not a general.
Yeah. Coming back on this question, you're both expecting or anticipating it happening. When you look at the rest of Europe, from your Eastern or Central Eastern perspective, from both, do you think we were just entirely naive as the European Union?
If you want to start this time.
Well, I think the mistake what we made was in February, but not 2022, but in 2014. Because many politicians here in Europe believe that you can build some diplomatic or business relations with Russia, which was completely a mistake. When they annexed Crimea, this was the moment of the sanctions, of very strong sanctions like we have now, and a military help to Ukraine, and Ukraine was calling for that for all the time. But politicians like Angela Merkel and so on said, no, if we will try to find a way to cooperate with Putin, build the economical some strength routes, and buy the fossil fuel from Russia. This is the way we can prevail the wars in the future, and this strategy completely failed. Because if there is something what Russia truly hates, it's a weakness. When they feel the weakness, they attack. So for those who still say that the diplomacy is the best approach to all the military problems, yes, I do believe that diplomacy is really important, but you should know your adversary, and this adversary just don't respect diplomacy. And you can clearly see what happened when Donald Trump started negotiating with the Putin. Actually, the situation are getting just worse and worse every single day. And also this morning we woke up with the terrible news in Ternopil city, where 20 people were killed, 66 injured, and among 13 of them are children. And it happens just every single morning, and that's how diplomacy works with the Putin.
Yeah, and if I may, on the topic of our naivete, because I always feel like we are being too harsh on ourselves as Europeans, because the current global system has its reasons. You know, after 45, European nations did not trust each other not to cause a third world war. And in such an environment, of course, that a hegemon, USA, becoming our main protector, and sort of, we will pour all our defense resources there, made sense, because we did not trust each other. I think that after 8 years, we can say that Germany is not going to attack France, and France is not going to attack Latvia. So I think we as European continent really consolidated well, and also the global spectrum changed. China, USA, everybody is doing a different thing that they were doing back in the 50s. So we should also adapt, but we should not be so harsh at saying, oh, we overslept and we should have done this and that. We should have behaved differently 2008 with Georgia. We should have behaved differently in 2014 with Ukraine. But we were still learning our own place in the new world, where we were always, under the umbrella of NATO, thus the USA actually. We did not produce any weapons for ourselves. And it's good that now we are changing it. It's not good under what circumstances, but at least we can adapt now if we know about it.
I admire that you always find something positive in all situations.
Really? I find myself so cynical usually, so thank you.
Well, we'll come to more solutions as well toward the end, because we like to leave on a hopeful note, so it's good we already start. I want to maybe bring it to on the ground in Ukraine, because you've both been there now, I think, multiple times. I think you've also been in situations where you've been there when there's been bombings as well. When you speak to Ukrainians who are in Kyiv or other cities, what most surprises you now, 3 years into the war?
I think you have more experience in that.
Well, what surprises me, of course, the obvious answer is the resilience, of it all, but it's forced resilience. Nobody wishes that upon them to be resilient like that. But I really want to mention in this area, and I've seen it mostly in Kharkiv, which is much worse off. It's still second largest city, so really huge, so many people, and they are at the forefront, just a couple of kilometers from constant bombing from Russia's borders. And I found that they fight it the most with sort of this cynical humor, but a lot of humor, and I don't know about Latvia, but I find it very similar to Czechs also. We are sometimes called cynical monsters, or laughing monsters, but I find it so relatable, and I felt like, yes, those are our brothers and sisters, so to say. And so that really impacted me emotionally a lot. It's for a lot of nationalities, I think, that didn't go through it, they would find it, too cynical.
Dark humor.
Yeah, dark humor, but we just find solace in that. So that surprised me, but surprised me how similar we are to each other. And maybe I'll give you the opportunity to speak more. We don't have many
of course,
stories.
The Ukraine was always a very strong nation, but right now you can really evidence the creation of building of the new, very resilient, very quite united and strong the nation who has clearly made their choice and who are firmly stand for this choice. This is, of course, a unique moment in European history. Of course, we also see some disappointment in West, that we are so lazy and sometimes to help them, and maybe something too much scared of everything what happened. And very soon I go into Ukraine once again, and I'm really struggling. You know, what should I say to give them some more hope, and that I'm proud that we Europeans are the strongest allies now. So yes, I know many people say that European Union is slow, it takes long to take decisions, but I think what is good upon European Union, then when we take a decision, we don't change it. And we are like a big ship with the 27 captains who are a little bit struggling to take a decision, but when a decision is made, we never change the course, and we are the strongest allies to Ukraine.
And it's actually surprising how much we can do without the federation. Like, you know, what the US is doing with all of its states and all of its power, compared to us, you know, being 27 kittens out of the basket, a little bit running around. It's actually impressive how well we can coordinate if we really decide for a common cause. Yeah.
Do you think Europe's prepared for a prolonged conflict? I mean, it is already a prolonged conflict, but I'm not even talking on military terms, but also mentally, politically. We have a lot of pressure now from the US. What's your view on where this goes if it continues for longer?
Yeah, if I may start with this one, because I've read in The Economist, I think, an article that estimated it, if it went at the same speed as it goes now, Russia would take over Ukraine in 108 years. So I doubt that Putin has 108 years or wants to have that. And we also don't have that much time. Ukraine does not have that much time. So inevitably, there will be an escalation from someone's side. And I think it's our responsibility that it's not from Putin's side, because then it will be an escalation on his terms. You know, and a lot of people are afraid of escalation. And I understand it, of course. Nobody wants to be involved per se in the war, but you know, inherently the whole world is involved in the war, and we Europeans are extremely involved in the war. So when somebody says, oh, you know, the war fatigue, it's too much, you know, as a human being, I also understand it. I just myself said that I'm checking nervously my phone if everybody is alive, and it also has an impact on me. But, you know, I also realize that we need to take a strong stance, otherwise someone will take it for us, and then they will decide the new map, and then they will decide for the Baltics, you know, what happens, and then they might decide for Czech Republic and other countries. Sometimes I feel just like not a lot of people are realizing it, you know, when they talk about the Ukraine fatigue, that it impacts us all so much, and that we have to be involved in the solution.
But if I maybe comment on your question, are we ready politically, mentally? Well, there's one particular measurement, and the measurement we may call will to fight. And if we look this will to fight in Europe, results are quite dramatic, I have to say. For instance, here in Belgium, only 14% of people respond that they would be ready to defend the country, which is dramatically low. In Finland, it's one of the biggest, it's more than 80. In Latvia, it's 63. If you look about among the ethnic Latvians, it's close to 90. So wow. This will of fight is the most important thing. And how to raise this will of fight? First and foremost, you can't just talk about the war, because people don't want to talk about that, and I do respect this. But the most important is to build this resilience of society, is actually talk what we were going to do in the case of crisis. And a crisis over this may be different. Floods, wildfires, the gas explosion. And I think the governments, the politicians have to communicate with society what we were going to do, how we will protect ourselves, how we will protect our beloved relatives or maybe neighbors, and others. And this should be very frank and transparent, negotiations in society. And from this perspective, this is the last moment to start to talk about that. We did it in Latvia in 2000. We started in 2018, and we didn't talk about the war. Our total defense concept was how to raise this culture of awareness, the culture of that you are ready for any kind of crisis, and we avoided to talk about the war. And what happened in 2022? These were Latvian people who said, "We are ready to go back to the conscription. We want to increase our defense investments to 5%. This is Latvian society who demands this, not the politicians. And many people, like my wife, now is going to the army because they said, we want to know what to do in a case of crisis. Mm-hmm. So there is some ways to reach this level, and I think civil defense is one of the best paths to this goal.
Can I ask both of you, because I think maybe some people listening to a Green IFA podcast wouldn't necessarily associate us all the time with being sort of the sharks on defence and being more hawkish on those topics. I think you've already explained a lot why, but if you were to sum it up a little bit, why are the Greens IFA taking such a strong stance on something like Ukraine and defence?
Should I start as the pirate?
Yes, please.
Maybe I should explain that, I am in the Greens IFA group, and I agree with all the positions of the group on Ukraine and defense, but I'm also from the Czech Pirate Party. But I noticed actually that we had something very similar, and I think that's also why we stand strong on these topics, because we can adapt. We are not ideologically rigid if, introduced to new data or new geopolitical situation. And I've seen it, for instance, I have seen, previous programs of the European Green Party and European Pirate Party on the program I worked, where we back in the day in 2018-17 had something like, we are against exporting weapons into areas of conflict. And of course, I understand us, back in the day why we thought that, because all of the conflicts were very far away. We never expected it to be really so close to Europe, to democracies fighting. We thought, we will not support some authoritarian, right? But then we realized the world changed, and all of us immediately changed our programs. And that's not losing your values, that's adapting to the situation in the world, and actually maybe realizing, hey, we overlooked something. We are not afraid to admit a certain, let's call it mistake, although, as I say, it was contextual to the time. So that's why I think now many people might be surprised, but that's exactly because we care. We care, being it about what people usually think, environment, privacy or human rights. We also care about, security. We also care deeply about human lives in Ukraine. So that's why this emerged, I think.
The Greens were the first ones, actually, who started to talk about the energy independency. Mm-hmm. That we should stop importing fossil fuel from Russia. And nobody was listening to that. If we would do that 10, 15 years ago, Russia would be out of money and this war might never happened. Mm-hmm. And this energy independency and invest in the green energy, this was the solution we should do actually 15, 20 years ago.
Nord Stream.
Okay, we have asked a friend of ours in Ukraine, Olena from Kyiv, to send us some of her thoughts for you and some questions to you. So we're going to play that video now, and then we'll come back.
Привіт з України. Hello from Ukraine. My name is Olena. I'm from Kyiv. What is happening now in my country? Overall, Russia continues its shelling and attacks on civilian cities and tries to get occupy as much territory as they can. Major attacks are happening to south and east of Ukraine, but also on cities like Kyiv. I'm without electricity quite a lot of hours, and I have big fears that during winter we might have no heating, and this is very problematic for Ukraine with temperatures like -5, -10, -15. It would be just impossible to live in a building with this kind of temperature and no heating. Of course, there are some plans, emergency plans, what to do with this situation, but overall the situation does not look good.
So that was Olena from Kyiv, and thanks to her for sending in the video. She further says that it's clear Ukraine needs military, financial expertise and humanitarian support from each and every country. But she would like to know, efforts to end the war have stalled. What other options are there for the EU to support Ukraine? What are the ways to achieve peace that have not yet been explored?
If I may start with the options for the EU to more support Ukraine. There are so many allies that we can still take and that we are not taking either, because politically we did not agree yet, or because there is fear to do that. There are, of course, several things. Olena mentioned them, humanitarian, military. I will start with the military because that's the closest to my field of work. But we really do need to support Ukraine more in terms of aerial defense, drone defense and other, iron domes and stuff like that. We did not deliver them enough so far, and we need to deliver them more. We've seen it on, other areas and countries that if they do have these technologies, civilians are not dying. That's so crucial, to protect civilians every day, even in Kiev, even in Thermopylae, even in Lviv. People are dying, and that's just, so crazy to me after 3 years. So that's first. Then, of course, there is the open question of should we allow Ukrainians to fire at Russia and at their military targets? Of course we should. Like, they are in a war. How dare we even, make them ask what they should do with the weapons? They should do whatever makes them win, or at least have a level playing field. I always, when somebody asks me like, oh, but we need diplomatic means, right? That's the old, centuries-old thing of those who are pro-peace, although they just want capitulation of Ukraine. Well, I always tell them, if you want people at negotiating table, they need to have the negotiating table. The negotiating table currently is being bombarded from Russia. So of course Zelensky will not be able to sit, in a pile of wood. That he needs a level playing field, and that we can secure only with military aid and military assistance. End of the question. If you want to add something.
Yeah, well, Olena, I don't have, I think, good answers to this question. What else can be done? First of all, I do believe that Ukrainians knows very well how to stop this war. All we need to do is actually give them everything they demand. There are some limits, of course. We can help, but at least the problems you can solve by money are expenses. At least this part we can cover. Second of all, I do strongly believe that Russia will lose this war, but not on the battlefield. They will lose this war in economy. They are running out of cash. Unfortunately, Ukraine is running out of cash. We, as Europe, will help Ukraine to maintain the cash flow. I don't know who will help Russia. Maybe someone will do. But the real sanctions hasn't been started yet, I would say. From the United States, there's still, very few sanctions. Hopefully, the US Congress will take decisions which will really hurt the Russian economy. I believe this will be a little bit like an Afghanistan scenario. So the evil empire will just run out of money. And this is the way. That's why I think the approach the Europe has to say goodbye to the Russian gas and oil and isolate the Russia as a country, no cooperation. So I think this is the right way to go. And if there are cities without electricity and so on, I think we have all the competence and the tools to help them to fix it. There is no other formula I can provide.
Yeah. Okay, and thanks to Olena for sending in those questions. We're going to move on to a quick lightning round, just to change it up a little bit. So I have a sentence here that has been given to me from my team, and you have to complete that sentence. And I will start maybe with Markéta. So, I'm a member of the European Parliament because?
Because of world peace that I want to achieve.
Very nice. On your national day and all, what I miss most from home when I travel?
My countryside. My home is literally in the middle of the forest, and I really miss my home every time I'm in the city.
I'd say at Christmas it's very nice as well.
It is.
No? A tricky one maybe. Progressive politics in Latvia and Czechia is important because? Maybe one for both of you.
I think we are the last ones who really fight for European values, real European values. It's not easy choice because there are many political parties now who say, yeah, you know, but there's only a few who say there's no discussions. Either you accept European values or you deny them. There's no other middle way.
Mm.
Yeah, I completely agree. But you know, my answer would be slightly philosophical. Well, progressive politicians are needed because there are progressive people, and in democracy, they should also have their representation.
Good answer.
Okay, the last question is my favorite thing about Ukraine. I give it to you both.
Food.
Ooh. Any particular dish that's your?
Yeah, it's called salo.
Okay.
It's a ham, if I translate it correctly, and they have the best salo in the world.
Oh, very nice.
They call it Ukrainian drugs or narcotics are salo. I fully agree with that.
I would have to say a place, and that will be actually Kharkiv, because I have a second largest city syndrome. You know, I always think that in any country, the second largest city is, you know, much better. And with Kharkiv, I can also confirm it's true.
Okay, very good. Now, in front of you, I believe you both have questions for one another. This is our myth-busting round. So, Markéta, you have a question for Mārtiņš that we will let you go. You go first.
Yes, absolutely. And it's something that I touched upon, so you can now share your thoughts on it, I think. So I often hear in the Czech context, maybe you hear it too, that you know, we hear from both communists and the far right, that we should just sit down at the one negotiating table with Putin, stop the fighting, and then that further support to Ukraine will only increase the number of war victims. How would you explain to them why this is misguided?
Well, it will work only if Russia will begging for negotiations. Then the diplomacy will gonna work. If we will be the ones who will invite them on the table, that will fail. That will fail as it fails so far. I think there's quite clear answer to that. So my question to you now, so you know what our opponents say about the Greens and Pirates, that we are like one issue movement party, and when it comes to the topics like security and defense, we are not so much interested to that. So what would be your answer or your response to that?
Well, my first answer, of course, be look at us, look at the two of us. Like, how can you say we don't care about those topics? I already slightly touched upon it. Of course, that we might have been perceived by that, but we adapted and we grew. We grew with our voters, we grew with our movement, and we still represent completely the same values. We just a little bit broadened the spectrum. But if you like our values in all the other areas that we mentioned, being it digital freedoms or green policies, that you will probably like our values in security and defense too, where we have them too. And now we also have experts.
We do.
Thank you very much for those two questions. So we're going to try end on a hopeful note in a very tricky situation. And Mārtiņš, I want to pick up on something you said earlier about the many Ukrainian refugees who came to Latvia. I wanted to ask you earlier, but I want to come back to it because I think it could be interesting. That must have changed Latvia in many ways, positive ways as well. And just for because in Ireland we have had the rise of the far right also because of letting in lots of Ukrainian refugees. I just want to get your sense of how that went for Latvians in terms of welcoming people from Ukraine.
I was very proud about my fellow Latvians, and not only Latvians, there were Russians and also Lithuanians who live in a country, that we really opened the doors, and we let people live in our families. And people came in one door with big suitcases, 1,000 per day in average, and they all leave this refugee centrum by they knew where the children were going to go to the school, where they were going to live. And the municipal police were just, say, okay, give me your suitcase, I will bring you to the family. And most of them, at least in early stage, lived in the family. So I think this is the moment when we realize that we are the humans and our heart is in the right place. And if we really believe that something is going wrong, and if we believe that there's justice should come, that we show our humanity. And this is the best thing.
Yeah. From all of the hard things that you've both seen in the last years, because I don't think there's no concrete solutions for this very complex war, but are there moments of hope that you've seen, or kind of, even if it's the smallest story or people that you've met that give you a bit of hope when it comes to the war in Ukraine, Markéta?
Well, now from the Czech perspective, I have the war very much connected to a group of documentarists who were traveling there. I was sort of at the beginning with them, not because I was scouting locations, but I was just there for my own purposes, and they joined in. And now a document emerged out of it. In English it's called Change My Mind, but in Czech it would be translated as the Great Patriotic Trip, which somebody might recognize as a reference to Great Patriotic War. And it's actually, they brought people who don't believe that there is a war in Ukraine and that Putin is great. They brought them to Ukraine and showed them, stories of people that I also personally met. They lost everyone in the war, and they showed them the consequences of the war, the crushed buildings and everything. And I will not spoiler it, what happened, what they realized, but that document and its outcome and its message gave me a lot of hope, and especially the movement it now created. Actually, not only in Czech Republic, it's now being streamed abroad, and I just feel like this, we can still get together, even though there are people like the three people in the movie who, did not really change that much. Everybody around them changed. Everybody realized, it is actually my issue. It's my problem to behave in a certain way, to be the best version of myself for others, for Ukrainians, for the world. So that gave me a lot of hope. And I hope that a lot of people will see it and have the same feeling.
Maybe the last question then to Mārtiņš. If you had a message to the public more generally about why it's important to keep the faith and keep support for Ukraine, what would that be?
Maybe ask yourself the question, what will happen if Putin will win this war? It means that you can kidnap the children, do all the war crimes you do, and you just got unpunished. Do you agree with this situation? That's the first question. And maybe the second question, what will happen if now there are two great armies in this continent, Russian army, unfortunately, but also Ukrainian army. If Putin takes control of this, they will be like, of course, I believe Ukrainians will never fight against the Europe, but all the military industry they have and so on will be controlled by him. What kind of danger that might create to all of us. That's why it's so important to not allow him win this terrible game he has started.
Mārtiņš and Markéta, thanks a million for joining today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
If you like this conversation, you can find out how to subscribe to our podcast at greens.eu/podcast. This podcast has been a production of the Green IFA Group in the European Parliament with help from the editorial team, Katie, Alexiane, Lena and Jeroen. Technical support was done by Andrea and Agnes. Editing is by Cloak. If you have any comments, reach out to us via podcast@greensifa.eu. Take care.